We are so excited to be joined by Peter Reynolds from Temple University. Peter has a BA in theater and a BM in voice from Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, and an MFA in directing from Temple University. He's worked all over the place, including great places like Oregon Shakespeare Festival. He has spent 6 years as the artistic director of Chicago's HealthWorks Theater, where he won the award for excellence in prevention education, and is the founding artistic director of Mockingbird Theater Company in Philadelphia, and is now the head of musical theater at Temple University, which is located in Philadelphia, PA. They take classes of about 16 to 20. They offer degrees, a BA in theater, a BFA in MT, and a BFA in dance. We'll talk about some of those specific degrees they offer. Peter, welcome on the show. How are you feeling today?
Thank you. I'm good. I'm in my own home because President Obama is on Temple's campus today, and we we got an email about parking and the ability to even get to school. So I thought, well, maybe I will.
That's a good idea. We were
stay home
doing an
today.
event this weekend, and Trump was at MSG, which is like a couple blocks away from our event. We were like, "Oof, this is gonna be tricky. Sorry, guys. Hope you can figure out how to get in."
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
At least Obama's not at your home. I thought you were going to be like, Obama's in the next room. I'm like, well, then we have to pause this podcast. Let's talk to Obama a little bit. We don't. It's going to be as interesting as Temple is about to be. No, but let's give me a little bit of. So I read a little brief bio, and hopefully didn't butcher any of those names. But give me a little bit of just kind of your way into Temple in terms of your own background and any fun facts or tidbits you want to give us kind of about your path to Temple.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was someone who. I was artistic director of a theater company in Chicago, and a great, rewarding job, wonderful experience. And 9/11 happened, and I had one of those moments that I know everyone probably had of, okay, where do I want to be 5 years from now? Is this what I want to be doing? And I really wanted my MFA. I just had always wanted an MFA. And found Temple and ended up at Temple, which was terrific.
And what is this award in prevention education that you got at HealthWorks? It's not preventing education from happening, is it?
No, sorry.
That would be such a turn that it happened. Yeah.
My phone is ringing. I'm sure it's someone political calling.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, you're in PA right now. Yeah.
Yes. HealthWorks, we did HIV/AIDS prevention education and youth violence prevention, and the city gave us an award for our work. Traveled all over the Midwest, all over the country with HIV/AIDS prevention plays.
Super cool. Super cool. Okay, well, so let's get to Temple a little bit. So, from your experience now as head of musical theater at Temple, what do you sort of feel like makes a Temple student, I'm going to say distinguishable from other students, but really just what makes them unique? What is the ethos of a Temple student in terms of like what you're seeing in your classes?
Yeah. What I love so much about Temple is it is a truly diverse community in every way you can imagine. There are people whose 4 generations have gone to Temple. There are many students who are the first people in their family to have gone to college. There are a lot of students from PA, but students from everywhere else. My favorite thing is when I'm teaching a class of a certain cohort, and I'm able to say, look how wonderfully different we all are from one another. And that is the most exciting thing for me. The students that I meet and get to work with, when universities often will, have a campaign to kind of explain, this is what the university is. If you imagine Target, expect more, pay less. When Temple came up with a campaign, they came up with Temple Made, and I thought, yes, exactly. That's it. These are, hardworking, dedicated young people from all over who come together and really work hard together.
Yeah. It's really beautiful. I mean, that is, I think, a lot of actors' experience of moving to New York City for the first time, depending
Mhm.
where you come from, of just going, "Oh my God, this is what it feels like to live in the world." It's why it's so hard sometimes for people to leave because they're like, depending where I live, I might not have that same feeling of like all the diversity of just different experiences of different ages and classes and all the things that are just sort of jammed together in one place. It's really, I mean, obviously you're very close to New York City too, but just that's a really cool experience that often happens at college, I think, for
Yes.
the first time. Um,
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about your curriculum. So, especially we can talk about the different degrees, and I do want to make sure we touch on the BA,
Mhm.
touch on dance, touch on a little bit of acting and design and directing, different options they can have. But
Mhm.
when we talk about the BFA MT, can we talk about those 4 years of curriculum of what does freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year look like in terms
Mhm.
of their
Mhm.
path?
Acting, singing, dancing, of course.
Hmm.
We do have a strong gen ed curriculum that the BFA students take as well.
What
Uh,
does that look like about percentage wise? If you want to talk credits or talk like hours in the day, like how much gen ed am I doing versus acting, singing, dancing?
10 gen eds over the 4 years.
Hmm.
And
10
those
gen
are,
ed classes, that means.
yes,
Yep.
yes. And those are usually 3 credit hours. 2 of them are 4 credit hours.
Yep.
But oftentimes a student comes in, particularly in musical theater, who've already done their English
Yeah.
in high school, or
If
it
you have an
comes
AP
through with
class or yeah.
AP,
Yep.
and they've already accomplished some of those.
Yep.
I
So
want
does
to
that
point
mean,
out,
do any of your students end up taking, do they get minors? Do they use those 10 credits to sometimes say, I'm going to get a business minor. I'm going to do something outside of the theater world.
yes, they do. Yes, they
Hmm.
do. It's tight, but they do it. I have, because the Boyer College of Music and Dance is a separate school,
Hmm.
even though work closely together and are in the same under the same umbrella. Many of the musical theater students will minor in dance as
Uh-huh.
well.
Yep. Totally makes sense. But I imagine pretty unlikely for a double major, just credit wise.
It's doable. Faculty members, as you can imagine, are charged to
Yep.
get a student through in 4 years, in eight
Hmm.
semesters. That is
Hmm.
our job. When when a student says, we really want to do the double major,
Yep.
and it's okay if partially because that's what I did. That was my
Yep.
experience. We say, okay, let's do it. I had a clarinet performance and a BFA musical theater double major.
Hmm.
I had a business and BFA musical theater
Hmm.
double major. Took each of them 5 years
Uh-huh.
total.
Yep. Totally makes sense. Okay, but now let's zero in on that acting, singing, dancing. So, is there a focus of the three that you feel like Temple leads on in terms of going, hey, our MTs really are strong dancers or really strong singers, or we spend more time on the acting? Does it feel equal in all three? And then let's talk through maybe some of the what the progression of those three are.
Yeah, well, Temple has been a professional training program for almost 60 years,
Hmm.
and it was very important to me when we started this that the acting piece of the puzzle be honored
Yep.
and be very strong. So that is part of it. Also, we have 1 hour private voice lessons every single semester,
Hmm.
and as well as a studio class every week
Yep.
with the other people in your who are studying with your teacher, which I'm very proud of that.
Hmm. And what? Tell me about the. Yeah, tell me a little about the dance then too. So, how does the dance work in terms of
Yeah,
how often am I dancing? What kind of dance am I getting?
we have a full cohort of dance courses in musical theater, but then the Boyer College, as I mentioned, even if you don't minor, there are other courses available over there that
Hmm.
students take and supplement with.
Yep.
We kept the dance classes in musical theater at 1 credit hour so that students could repeat
Yep.
as often, as much as they wanted to.
Yeah. And then how does that work with, so from the acting sequence, I'd love to hear like what is the acting sequence of your MTs, but then also how does it work if I were, overlapping with the BA theaters who might be concentrating in acting, or how does that sort of interaction work with acting across your program?
Yeah. Well, the first 2 years, everyone is together,
Hmm.
taking acting one, two, and three. Then the audition for the acting concentration comes at the end of the sophomore year,
Hmm.
and the acting concentration students are then juniors and seniors.
Hmm.
So the students are all matriculating together in those first 2 years, which is awesome. The acting or the musical theater BFA acting 1, 2, 3 are required, but I can tell you the majority of my students take acting 4
Uh-huh.
as well.
Uh-huh. And what does acting for look like? What is that progression in terms of like the kind of study that you're getting in 1, 2, 3, 4, and then as it gets
Yeah.
more advanced? I mean, are we doing classical stuff, or how does that work and as weaved in for the musical theater people?
Yeah, acting 1, 2, Stanislavski, Uta Hagen based, absolutely. Exploration of other
Mm-hmm.
forms, viewpoints, Meisner. 3, acting 3 is heightened language and text,
Mm-hmm.
Shakespeare. And acting 4 is the Michael Chekhov technique.
Yep. Love it. And that's the one that you say many people take, but is not actually require them. Okay.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
What about, let's talk about, especially with the MTs, how do you prepare your students for their launch into the business? So, when we talk about a showcase, I know you guys have a Philly and a New York City showcase,
Mhm.
but so preparation for that little showcase, but also then the preparation for sort of entry into the business at large and how to
Yeah.
meet agents and how to do all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, 2 courses. One is called Musical Theater Dress Rehearsal. One is called Theater's a Profession. Uh, both capstone courses where we bring people to Temple to
Mm-hmm.
see them and be in a room with them. And we also have a Friday course called Production Practicum, which the entire student body of theater meet
Mm-hmm.
together, and we bring in guests every week
Yep.
from New York, from Philly, from professionals from all over
Yep.
to interface with the students.
Definitely an advantage of how close you are, that it
Yes,
is a day trip. It's a
indeed.
bus or a quick drive if you have a car.
Yep.
I live in New York City with a car now, Peter. It's changed it's so weird to have a car.
Really?
It's so weird since having a kid. I'm like, oh my God, I could just like drive to Philly now, which like would not have seemed like
Yep.
easy,
Yep.
when I was living in Midtown. Let's talk a little bit about, we mentioned some of those minors and other options, but just the broader Temple University, sort of what am I getting in the experience of being a Temple student outside of the MT part of it?
Yeah. Temple is, as a whole, is 32,000.
Mm-hmm.
Theater department is 325.
Yeah.
So you get a huge research one university with a hospital down the road, Temple
Mm-hmm.
Hospital down the road, law school, just everything that a major university can offer.
Yep.
And then we're this much more intimate, smaller program,
Yep.
which is right across the street from the internationally acclaimed Tyler School of Art and Architecture. We're across the hall from Theater, Film, and Media Arts,
Mm-hmm.
where our students often participate in films being
Mm-hmm.
made. And then right across the street from the Boyer College of Music and Dance. So this kind of arts corner in this large campus. And
Yep.
I think what makes Temple special is it truly is a college campus. You
Yep.
feel like you are on a college campus,
Yep.
and you happen to be in this major cultural and arts city.
Yep.
You know, 5 minutes down the road on the subway, and you are major regional theaters, major museums,
Yep.
the history. You get Philadelphia as
Yep.
well if you're a Temple student, which I think is the greatest asset.
It's so interesting. I was just talking with one of our students about that the other day of like, talking about the visiting different campus aesthetics and getting an idea of kind of what that's like. And it's like, sometimes people say either city schools or rural schools, but it's like, but there's also these different version of like
Yep.
city schools with a campus, with a feeling of like,
Yes.
I'm like, some of the schools in Boston, some schools in Philly, where you go, this feels like Pittsburgh, which I went to school at Carnegie Mellon. It's like, you do feel like you're on a college campus within a city.
Yep.
Is so different than like, NYU or some or experience where you're like, that's just a building in the city where you're like, I'm mostly the city. There is a different feeling when you're like, I'm surrounded still by a college campus within a city is almost as different as it is the rural experience compared to the other city
Yeah.
experiences.
That's
Yeah.
what the students tell me they like the best is
Mm-hmm.
that they've got both things.
That's
You know,
cool.
if they want to just be a college student on college campus or go to a football game, they
Yeah.
can. But then also
They have the city
everything
there.
that a
Yeah.
city offers is right there.
It's really cool. Let's talk a little bit about cost. So our crack research team said in-state seems like it's about 21,000. This is tuition, so then you're adding in housing and stuff like that, and then out of
Yes.
state's around 37,000. Of course, these numbers could change if you're listening 3 years from now, et cetera. But how does it work, especially when we talk about scholarships? So when from the perspective of I'm looking to attend Temple, I've auditioned for you. Where am I looking at scholarships coming from? Whether it's need, whether it's academic, whether it's talent based. How does that work for you guys in terms of
Yeah.
scholarships coming in?
The largest scholarships are through, well, filling out FAFSA and the Common
Mhm.
App. The largest scholarships are available from the university, and academic based and need based. We have in our department, we have some small scholarships.
Mhm.
We are not a scholarship rich uh, department,
Yep.
but we do have some. And but primarily it's through the university.
More of the icing on the cake if you're getting a couple $1,000s from you, but you're talking about the real would be coming from academic or coming from need in terms
Yes.
of the larger dollar amounts.
Yes.
And do you get a sense of like how many of your students pay something like half of the sticker price, something like do any pay full sticker price in terms of just what the experience of like how many of your students end up with some kind of scholarship who are attending?
I can't say for positively, but I do think they do pretty well with scholarship
Hmm.
acquisition. I do know I have a lot of in musical theater. I see a lot of honors students.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of presidential scholarships over the years.
Yep. It's amazing the correlation between whatever the skills that you need to be a good musical theater major, I think often tend to be a good high school student, tend to be organized, tend to be, I mean,
Yep.
disciplined, all those things that you need to do to show up to dance class. You do your homework. Unlike me, I never did my homework in high school. I should have done it, but yeah. You mentioned a little bit of the kind of where your students come from, in
Mhm.
terms of a lot of diversity, but do you have a sense of how many come from the PA area versus how many come from around the world, around the country?
Mhm. I would have to say the largest cohort would be Pennsylvania, New Jersey,
Yeah.
New York, Delaware.
Yep. And a decent chunk of that PA may be in the in-state tuition, getting a little
Yes,
help there. Yeah, totally
yes.
makes sense. And
But
then what
we've
about no, go ahead.
California,
Mhm.
Puerto Rico. I have a student from Brazil this fall, uh,
Yep.
all over.
Yep. And what about the question of where they end up? Do most end up going straight to New York, like right after school? Do some stay in Philly and work in Philly for a little bit? Do you find others go to LA? Like especially with the BFA where do people tend to migrate?
You just described it. You just said it. Yeah. LA, New York, and some stay in Philly.
Yeah.
I have quite a large amount of recent graduates on boats
Yep.
right now, Royal Caribbean, Disney.
Oh, cruise ships, not just living on boats or
Yes.
something.
Right.
Wow, that's
Living
interesting. Okay.
on boats in the Schuylkill River. No.
Yeah. And then what about, you mentioned sort of having access to Philly as a resource. How does that work in terms of your time in Philly? Especially in terms of like connections within the Philly market. Like, what does that feel like in terms of a student? If I'm attending, are they doing local shows in Philly during school? How does that work with your department? I guess, what does that interaction look like from your end?
We completely encourage it if it makes sense. If that makes sense.
Yep.
Every situation is unique and it's a discussion.
Yep.
Can you do it? Does it even work with, with school? The Walnut Street Theater has a couple of musical slots that actually work pretty well
Mm-hmm.
with the school schedule. A more summer slot, a more holiday
Mm-hmm.
slot, and students have been in those productions quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of alums and current students in Jersey Boys right now at the Walnut
Mm-hmm.
Street, for example. We've had students understudy do shows at the Arden
Yep.
Theater, which is a great theater downtown, and
Mm-hmm.
there are lots of great theaters in town.
Yep.
It's just a discussion, really, each circumstance.
Yep.
Can can we make it work?
Yep.
Because we want it to
Yep.
work.
I love it. I'd love to wrap this section with just, as students are making their final decisions and you're talking with families, I'd love to kind of hear why do you find a student signs on the dotted line, meaning they go, yes, Temple's for me. I'm weighing my other 5 options and this is where I'm going? And why do you find, if you hear that a student says, you know what, it was between you and another school, I'm going to this other school because of X, Y, and Z? Why do you find they choose you, and why do you find they choose to go somewhere else?
Usually, the ones who choose to come to Temple, or it's after a visit.
Mm-hmm.
Our students, our current students, are so generous with their time and with their openness and desire to welcome new students. And when students come and see the campus and meet the other students, we have a pretty tremendous rate of acceptance. I I say from the very beginning, and I really, really, really mean it, and have said it for years, where you want to be, the environment in which you want to be for your 4 years is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not the lists, not all the noise from the internet
The
about what
list
you
being
should
top
do.
programs or those kind of things. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Where you should be, what
Mm-hmm.
you should be. It's really important to feel the vibe of a school. Every
Mm-hmm.
school has its own vibe, and there are great programs everywhere. And I really mean it when I say what feels right for you is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well said. Okay, we're taking a short break, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about the audition and the admission process. So back in a flash. All right, we are back with Peter Reynolds. On the break, we were chatting about our love of Coke Zero, which a new sponsor of the pod, actually. Coke Zero. No, wouldn't that be nice? No, we're talking a little about the audition and admission process. So I want to sort of, in short, talk a little bit about just what you're looking for in an audition. So, you see a lot of students that are coming in, and as you're sort of sniffing for why this might be, yes, a fit for Temple, why this might not be, what are the primary factors that you're looking for?
Does it make sense to say authenticity?
Sure, it's a perfectly normal thing to say,
you
yes.
know, uh,
And what do you mean by that? Define authenticity for you. Like, how do you see authenticity in a monologue, in a song, in someone's work?
Uh, maybe an anecdote will make sense. A current senior who just played Cassie in a chorus line, incredibly talented young person. I still remember
Mm-hmm.
her wild card video,
Mm-hmm.
and she was sitting on her bed with a guitar playing a song she had
Mm-hmm.
written, and it was so clear that this was an individual. This
Mm-hmm.
was she just exposed her humanity.
Yep.
It was so clear that this was someone who would be a wonderful fit, and we'd really like to
Mm-hmm.
have at our school.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Well said. We'll get into the wild card maybe a little more. Let's talk about pre-screens. Is there anything in terms of, that interaction between, let's say, let's call the talent, meaning like what I'm seeing in the acting, singing, dancing, and what I'm evaluating in terms of the student's current level versus some of those softer factors, which of course are going to weigh in, like who is this human being, and like tell me a little bit about on the talent end. What are you looking for vocally, dance, acting? How do those sort of interact for you as you're evaluating a student's first audition?
You like them to be in a good place, all three areas
Mm-hmm.
in a good place, in a trainable place, uh, a voice that hasn't been damaged. I hate to say damaged
Mm-hmm.
by previous training, or
Mm-hmm.
uh, another. I'll go back to an anecdote. Another current sophomore nailed the dance call,
Mm-hmm.
had a really lovely voice that didn't have any sense of trouble, just
Mm-hmm.
clean and clear, vocalist, good actor. And then the wild card was him riding a skateboard
Uh-huh.
and just being his like really interesting, generous self.
Yep. Yeah, generous on a skateboard. What, is he throwing away cash? What's he doing? He's just giving out some prizes and promotions off the skateboard. No, well, let's get into the pre-screen then. I love that you brought up the wild card twice. So yeah, how do you use that as a factor? So I'd love to hear about like both in terms of if you're willing to share how many people send them in and how many then get callback auditions, but then just kind of how you're using it. It seems like wildcard is a big factor for you in terms of that yes or no. But how are you using those to sort of make the cut for yourself?
I enjoy watching them, and I think they really can tell you a lot
Mm-hmm.
about a human. So it's you watch the ballet video and the dance video and see what place the dance training is at.
Mm-hmm.
You listen to the voice. You watch the monologue, and the wild card just gives me entree into their humanity.
Yeah.
I love them.
Yep. Do you
And
find you're using more of that? Like, do you watch them only at the beginning of the process? Do you find you're watching them at the end as you're making your final decisions as well as sort of a post screen?
oh yeah, I've gone back
Yeah.
to them. Yeah.
Yep. And then what about the sort of callback audition? What should a student expect in terms of what might be happening in the room that goes beyond what they have to do for the pre-screen? So obviously they can maybe doing the same material, but then what else would you be doing in terms of interviews, adjustments, additional material? What might you ask in a
A,
callback audition?
a dance call.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
They if they do the same material from pre-screens, that's okay.
Yep.
It's just I don't know how we did it during the pandemic. We did it, and I had wonderful students that was
Yep.
all found all through virtually.
Yep. Fully blacked out at this point.
I
Right? Yeah.
know, but seeing people in the room is so
Yep.
telling. Last year in Chicago, one of the days, we had a room that was Charlie was basically an office.
Uh-huh.
There weren't desks, but it was
Uh-huh.
an office,
Uh-huh.
maybe a 7 or 8 foot
Uh-huh.
ceiling. And we did the dance call, and it was glorious.
Yeah.
We learned so much about the students, and they were game. And I mean, nobody got hurt, of course. There was enough room,
Yep.
but it was so kind of silly,
Yep.
the environment we were in, and what we learned about the students was
Right. How game are you?
fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and you're certainly gonna in New York City be dancing and acting in some weird rooms. You're like,
Yeah.
this is the theater. This is where did the audience go? How's it? All right, we'll figure it out. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. What about so then from the artistic side of things, you are making the judgment you're making. How does that interaction work with then the Office of Admissions for things like how their grades are factored in, how the SAT scores if they factor those in, essays, all the other parts of the application that are not the theater part of it. How does that interaction work with you guys?
Yeah, basically, we cannot offer a position in the BFA musical theater program unless a student is academically accepted to the university.
And would that be generally at the standard that Temple would normally have, or is there
Yeah,
any different factor? So
yeah.
basically, you have to get into Temple academically as if you were not a musical theater student, and then you're considered.
There can be discussion, and there's been discussions with admissions if the academics are uh, not quite at the place,
Yeah,
and the talent is super strong, but we they need to be accepted
yeah.
academically to Temple.
Yep. And then how does that work with do you look at any other parts of the application? Do you read the essays? Do you read the Common App essay? Do you read letters of recommendation? Do you interact with any of those academic sides of the application?
I don't know.
I love it. What else do you think about as you're filling out a class? So, like, you're looking for the authentic human beings. Obviously, we're looking for a level of talent, or a trainability, if this is how you put it, which I think makes a lot of sense in terms of where you need them to be. What are you thinking as you're putting together a cohort in terms of how conscious are you of things like gender balance and height balance and size and racial diversity, geographical balance, ability? How are you thinking about, hey, I'm putting these 16 to 20 people together? How does that factor in, or how do you have those discussions of the class that you're putting together?
Yeah, I'm looking for a diversity that is reflective of Temple,
Hmm.
the diversity that Temple has,
Hmm.
you know.
And then how does that factor in with stuff like we mentioned, even in talking about that 16 to 20, you might not get exactly what the first 20 that you offer. How do you guys over yield? Do you expect you're going to have some no's? How does it work with waitlist movement in terms of you then adding in and trying to make the class that you ultimately are going to
At
receive?
least for us, we found that you have to
Yeah.
over yield to, and we've landed it's bizarre to me how we've landed on it successfully,
Yeah.
16 to 20 for the past number of years.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's quite a process, as you know.
Oof, I know. I
and the
mean, because all the
waiting
different
and
schools are trying to estimate and
yep,
do this polling it for sure. Well,
yep.
and what does you mentioned the office in Chicago? What does the audition landscape look like for you guys in terms of where are you going to see the majority of your students between on campus? Those main unifieds? Are you going New York, Chicago, LA? How does it look in terms of sort of where you'll see the most of your students and where they could audition for you? Do we have online options, et cetera?
New York, Chicago, and then Philadelphia.
Hmm.
We do accepted, of course, so the accepted pre-screening, and then have 3 days in Philly,
Hmm.
the 2 days in New York, and 3 days in Chicago.
Hmm. And then are there online options if a student isn't able to make one of those days?
Yes.
There would be like a live online day as well.
Yes.
Mhm.
We usually couple that with the Philadelphia days.
Uh-huh. Totally makes sense. All right, great. We'll take one more short break, and then we do have a special bonus topic we want to do on the back end with Peter. So we're
Oh,
back in a flash.
all right.
Okay, we are back with Peter Reynolds. And I'm dying to get into this because I've sort of made this little promise to myself that I'm going to ask all the faculty since the UArts happened about UArts. And only a couple have actually snuck it in. It's just sort of the interviews and the timing of it. And sometimes we ran out of time, et cetera. So I'm really excited, especially I feel like you're a great school to talk about it because I know you're one of the schools that was really quick in offering to open up your doors to all those UArts students. I mean, a number of schools ended up doing it, but really wonderful that you guys were able to do that. You're able to, it seems like, accept students at different levels and different places, which is really tricky, I know, with the BFAs. But so first off, maybe for anyone who's a newer listener to the pod, or some of our older listeners will have heard us talk about in general, but we want to talk about kind of what happened at UArts from your perspective, and then just what you were able to do in accepting those students, and then we'll get a little deeper into it. So, but just first off, what was that experience from your end of going, oh my gosh, what's happening?
Well, it was just shocking for everyone, and most importantly, the students,
Yeah,
the UArts students. What and the educators and other
totally.
artists
A lot
at
of
the
friends out of
university
jobs. Yeah.
was just so shocking.
Yeah.
And of course, and right away, Temple, me personally, of course, we wanted to help.
Yeah.
How we could.
And what does that look like? I mean, I think that's what many actually. I ended up talking with a lot of educators who were like, "How are these other schools doing it? How can you accept a BFA student? Like like literally? So what did that look like in terms of? Were you able to end up taking people as sophomores, as juniors, as different years in terms of the BFA?
Yes, the largest number of the biggest cohort that came in were the rising seniors.
Right.
And of course,
Mm-hmm.
what can we do to, of course, come so we can
Mm-hmm.
get you this BFA degree? So that is the largest group.
Right. Right.
And uh,
And how did that work with like showcasing? Did they showcase alongside Temple
we're
students?
we're going to the plan is the same day,
Mm-hmm.
but with a little break between,
Yep.
and just have a big celebration,
Yes.
and say these are the UArt
Yes.
students who finished, their last year with us.
You imagine the industry. I mean, I imagine though you can tell us how it works, but I imagine the industry will do some rallying behind. I mean, there's so much within the industry. What can we do to help? That
Yeah,
I imagine that there are people who go, I'm going to show up for those students, and I'm going to make sure I
yeah,
attend that showcase. And
I sure
um,
hope so, because
yeah,
the students who matriculated from UArts that I've interfaced with, personally in class, have been fantastic,
yep,
as people. And we had a meeting of the full musical theater cohort, and it was an opportunity to check in, see how everybody's doing. I expected a smooth, positive meeting, but some of the things that students said were just inspiring.
mm-hmm,
The
mm-hmm,
way they said, "Well, I think this is a new opportunity, and I'm making the best of it, and I
yep,
want to make the best of it, and this it's great to be here."
yep.
Even
That's
if
great.
it's this last year of
Yep.
school.
And did
So
you have to end up adding additional classes for them, like just
yeah,
numbers wise, that you had additional, not cohorts, but you're saying additional classes just to fit in the students?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, instruction is not a problem because we're in Philadelphia and there are so many wonderful artists
Yep.
who can come in and teach. We're on a campus in a city, so space is the final
Uh huh.
frontier
Uh
and
huh.
will always be, you know.
Yep. Just navigating the jigsaw of where do people go and
Yes,
when and all the things.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
And then I guess in the broader conversation, this is just opening up to our listeners and a lot of the questions we got, right after this happened. I think so many of our families were like, now I have to worry about this? Like, what? I just didn't even think, like, it's so hard to get into school. It's so hard to do it. And now I have to think about our school match. Is that the kind of thing that you're getting a lot of questions about with families? Are families like
Mm.
asking about, assurances from your financial perspective of going, hey, Temple is going to be okay? Or, how have you seen that change the conversation on your end?
I have not seen that
Yeah.
at this point, but we're
Can you,
not
I
in.
guess, give us now financial assurances that you will be okay? The Temple's not going down next year?
Oh, I'm I have no worries about that at all.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, no, I can't do it. And I have no idea it'll happen. You're like, no, I don't talk about the money. I don't want to. No, but no worries. And from Temple financial perspective. And certainly there is, that's something families can look for. There are some
Mhm.
reports and stuff you can find online. But,
Absolutely.
it does feel like so many things, you're like, now I'm responsible for this too. Now I have to like think about that even as an option. I think until a couple years ago, that was not something, or until last year, it was not something people thought about much at all.
Yeah, we had, the largest incoming class of students, the university
Uh huh.
that that we've had.
Yeah, it's great. One thing I didn't get to talk about in the first section, which I had written down, just as I know that our families often will ask about safety, especially it's true of any major city, but especially I think in Philly that people, if you're not from there, might be like, is it going to be safe? And is that the kind of thing that we talk about, or I guess what can you assure if a family were to say, will my student be safe while they're on Temple's campus? And what is that experience of in the broader Philly area?
Mhm. I would say to any parent who had concerns to talk to a current student,
Hmm.
talk to people who are at Temple every day. Uh, we have a very large security presence. Uh, the the resources are massive. Any student anywhere on campus who doesn't feel safe for whatever reason
Hmm.
to go home, there are shuttles, there are lifts. Someone will come and get them and take them. It's I would tell if I had a student, I would tell my student, meaning if I had a child, sorry, if
Hmm.
I had I would tell them the same thing I would tell them really at any university, anywhere, you know, stay with people. If it's
Hmm.
late after rehearsal,
Hmm.
walk with people. Don't be on the phone
Hmm.
by yourself, you know, be wise, you know.
Yep.
Temple is so lit up at night. It's lit up like a football field. And there's so many, because Temple was originally, a commuter campus
Yep.
years and years ago. And now it's just thriving and people out and about everywhere.
Hmm. Very cool. You've already just parlayed us into some advice in general, so I'll just wrap us with, for our parent listeners, just any advice about, how they can navigate this process with their children. Some people listening might be just beginning their search and putting their list together. Some might be seniors right now who are going through the process, really in the application. We're doing this right now in the fall of 2024, about to be election day. That's why you heard some politics come out at the beginning, though not much politics. We try to keep it down. But then, just what would you advise those parents in terms of how they can successfully navigate this for their children as they kind of launch into this business?
Help help them turn down the noise, the onslaught of information, the all the you must do this, you have to do this, it has to be this or this won't happen. It has, you know, what are what are you looking for, my student? What are
Hmm.
you Where do you want to be?
Hmm.
It's such an important 4 years, and you really need to be, I believe, where feels right for you and feels like a place you can grow and thrive.
Yep.
There
Yep.
are excellent students all over the country in lots of different programs. There are not so excellent students all over the country in all different, it's your 4 years
Yeah.
to grow and thrive and become the artist you want to become.
It's so well said. The takeaway I just did on a previous episode that was recording this week is about that search of like there is no perfect school that you're looking for.
No.
There's the perfect fit for you. You're searching for. You're not thinking about it like what is the exact perfect school and then rank them in the order of the good school. It's like what is a school that you're looking for you. Easier said than done though. I love how you sort of stop to say look at the student and be like what do you want? Where are you in this? Because it's easier said than done to even know that, like to even know what are the things that I think I prefer and what are the things that are important to me, or just often easier said than done.
Yeah, my colleague said to me years ago, you know, we must never forget that these are 17,
Mm-hmm.
18-year-olds
Mm-hmm.
who are dealing with this huge choice
Yep.
and something that has really been turned into big business.
Yep.
And if we can't ever forget their humanity and
That's
that
right.
they're putting themselves out there
Yep.
in this room, have traveled to Chicago or New York or Philadelphia and
Yep.
are putting themselves on the line and just looking for the place they want to be to
Yep.
study.
Yep. And it's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine the level of noise they are dealing with
Yeah,
in a different way than you dealt with and I dealt with. I mean, it's like I'm like I kind of remember what it was like. I'm like it can't be the same as it was when I was a kid in terms of the way you're filtering in noise from social media, the way you're filtering,
right,
noise in general. So
right.
let's
I,
brave students out there, we love you, and we're sending you some empathy, if nothing else, as you go through this process.
yeah,
Peter, this was so great getting to chat with you.
thank you.
If people want to hear more, right, they got to hear a nice little preview here of the program. But if they want to check out more information, do you like them going to that social media, which is ruining their lives? Do you like them going to the websites? What feels like we have at Temple Musical Theater on the socials? But are there places that you go, hey, this is really the best place for information if you're trying
Uh,
to look for stuff?
temple.edu theater, Theater.
Heck yeah, spell it the
Our
right way. We like it.
our website is terrific. Absolutely, we have Instagram, everything, the musical theater classes, and Temple Musical Theater has an Instagram
Yep.
account. Temple Theaters has an Instagram account. Absolutely.
Yep.
Happy for you to check out. If you're close enough, I always say come see a show
Mm,
to get a feel of what we're doing at Temple.
I love it. Thanks, Peter. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you.